Here are the exercises for Chapter 16. Write a program to simulate the rolling of a dice. The program should ask the user how many dice rolls are required, then generate a number in the range 1 to 6 that many times. So you're obviously going to have to figure out how to get the random numbers down from a range of 0 to 32,000 into the range 1 to 6. And that's, well, if you can figure out how to do that, then you've pretty much got the program written. Next, we're going to have a look at the course project. Now, we're going to make some absolutely fundamental and sweeping changes to the course project. It's going to become almost unrecognizable by the time we're through with it. I want main to display a menu, and the menu should have 9 options in it. 5 of those options should be file-based. Save the list with a new name, so do a save as. Open the list, create a new list. So all of these are standard things that you'll see in any sort of text editor or program similar. You'll have a file new, a file open, a file save as. We're going to have an extra one called file append. We're going to append the list of CDs to the end of an existing file that we already have. Then the way to simply add a new record to the list will be option number 6. That will do the adding of a CD. So that will be where you'll say, okay, please enter the artist and the title and the track number of tracks and all that. You do that through option 6. Option 7 will ask you to display a specific record, so they'll say which record would you like to look at, and they'll say, well, I'd like to see record number 7 please, so it'll display the 7th record in the array, and finally display all the records one after the other. That's what our program used to do. It just simply used to display all the records once we'd read them all in. So all we really had written before was options number 6 and 8, and obviously part of number 7. Finally we exit the program using option number 9. So we've got quite a lot of new stuff to write. All the stuff to do with files. Save the list with a new name, and all that stuff. Let's have a look at a few notes on that. This will take you a long time. This will take you a very long time. It took me a long time just to write it, and I knew what I was doing. It's going to take you a long time. It might take you, depending on how long you spend on it, or maybe 8 hours of coding to do this. So you might have to spread that over a few days. So I'm just warning you, it is going to take you a while. But the program that you end up with at the end of all of that will be, well, it'll be a real C program. The program we had before was pretty Mickey Mouse. It didn't really do anything. It wasn't useful in any way. It couldn't be used as a reliable CD database. If you make the changes that I'm suggesting in this chapter, you will actually be able to use this program to track your own CD database. It's not a very good program. Doesn't do clever searches or anything like that, but at least it will track the information. You can save your entire list out to a file. And the techniques that you use, they'll be invaluable. That's why I really want you to do this exercise. It's probably the most important of the exercises that we do in the entire course. If you get this one right, then you've got skills that you can use in virtually any C development program. One thing that you should note is that if you're using fwrite and fread to write structures out to the file and read them back in again, you can't use dynamically allocated artist and title names. In other words, you're going to have to go back to using arrays for the artist and title names, so that should actually make the coding slightly simpler. You won't have to allocate and free those names. If you don't know why that is, you might want to have a bit of a think about it. Okay, so when you've done that, make sure that at the top of the menu that you display, you show them the name of the current file, if there is one, and how many records are being currently stored in memory. So every time they add a new record, that number will go up by 1. Every time they save the list out to disk or read the list in from a disk, that will, if you like, cause the program to think of itself as using a particular file, just like Notepad. Think of this whole program as being very similar to Notepad. Whenever you do a file open in Notepad, Notepad puts the name of the file in its title bar, so Notepad realizes that it is currently editing a particular file. So if you ever go file save, it just saves that information straight out to the file. It already knows the name, it doesn't need to ask you for the name. However, if you do a save as, then it prompts you for the name of the new file. So I want our program to work almost exactly the same way that Notepad does. The file open, file new, file save as should all be exactly the same. See if you can mimic the behavior of a real program. Now when you're using the save or save as options, if the file already exists, then I want you to prompt the user to overwrite the file, and if they say no, then don't overwrite the file. The append option, you can use that to create a new file if necessary. So how might you check to see if a file exists? I'll leave that as a little exercise for you. How would you check to see if a file exists? There is a standard C library function that does that, but I want to see if you can do that using the tools that we've already seen. Now, I'd like the program to take a command line parameter, and what I'm talking about is I want the main to use the argc and argv parameters that it can use. In other words, if you called your program cd, for example, you might say cd space data.dat or something like that, and the program would read in all the CDs that are stored in data.dat and read them directly into the list. So in other words, it's going to do a file open automatically if there is a name of a file on the command line, and if there's no name of the file on the command line, then it won't do it. So it should simply be optional. Okay, finally, we don't want to lose data, so we've got to be a bit clever here. Ensure that if the user attempts to read a list from a file, in other words they're going to do a file open, or create a new list, or even exit the program, while they have created CDs using the program but they haven't saved those CDs out to disk, then the program will ask them if they're sure that they want to proceed. In other words, if they proceeded, they would lose all their changes. Think about it. If you're in Notepad, if you're in Notepad and you type in a few words and then you exit the program, it prompts you. It says, oh, are you sure you want to exit without saving your changes? So your program should do a similar thing. And if you're in Notepad and you've typed in a few words and then you go to open an existing file, then again Notepad will prompt you and say, hang on, you haven't saved your changes yet. I want your program to do the same thing. So I essentially want our program to mimic Notepad, except that where Notepad is dealing with words, we're dealing with CDs. Ensure that any functions that do not return a value are made void. Remember those void functions that I talked about at the beginning of the chapter? And see if you can find some appropriate usage for @exit, maybe a goodbye message or something like that, just to get in the hang of using @exit. Okay, so good luck. I know that's a very, very large number of things for you to do, but I have a full work solution. It took me a long time to do, so you can go and have a look at that. It's fully commented. Hopefully it will be fairly self-explanatory. I will walk you through it in the next module.